I'd like to welcome you to Fort Concho National Historic Landmark. Fort Concho stands as a reminder of an important and exciting time in our nation's history. Fort Concho is one of the best preserved frontier forts in the nation, and I would like to tell you a little bit about the fort's history and what's going on here today. Fort Concho got its start when the 4th Cavalry of the U.S. Army established an outpost near the banks of the three Concho rivers in December of 1867. This site was chosen for its strategic position and central location in the state. This outpost was one in a line of forts that were being built throughout Texas to protect and defend mail routes, settlers, and America's border following the Civil War. Fort Concho was an active post from 1867 to 1889. Arriving here in the winter of 1867, troopers found a vast treeless prairie. As you can imagine, life was difficult. The troop was forced to live in tents while construction of permanent buildings was begun. The storage of food and equipment was their first priority, so the first buildings to be completed were the commissary and quartermaster storehouses. These original buildings are still standing on the grounds of the fort today. The forts of this era were built in an open U shape, and because trees were hard to find in West Texas, Fort Concho had no surrounding wall for protection. Fort Concho was constructed of limestone, which, unlike trees, was plentiful. This use of limestone is the reason a large number of original buildings are still being used today. The last of the major construction was completed 12 years later in 1879, when the schoolhouse was finished. This building, which doubled as the chapel, was just one of many which served the needs of the post soldiers, officers, and their families. In all, the fort had 40 permanent structures and 8 companies of troops, or 400 men. Fort Concho, at various times, housed both infantry and cavalry units. The fort's garrison was made up of both black troopers, which the local Indians called buffalo soldiers, and white soldiers. Military duties for these troops included both mapping and scouting expeditions. They also escorted and protected stages, cattle drives, and railroad survey crews. The troops served as a police force for the area. They protected the farms and settlements from Comanche, Kiowa, Apache, and Kickapoo raids. However, the troopers spent much of their time maintaining the fort, drilling, and other less exciting duties. Fort Concho also served as headquarters for a number of different units. They were the 10th Cavalry, commanded by General Benjamin Grierson, the 4th Cavalry under Colonel Randall McKenzie, the 11th Infantry, and the 16th Infantry. Under General Grierson, the post was also headquarters for the Army's huge Army of the Pecos from 1878 to 1881. Fort Concho proved vital to fighting the Indian Wars in the Southwest. In 1875, Colonel Rufus T. Shafter led an infantry expedition into the Staked Plains. This was one of the longest patrols at this time. Colonel Randall McKenzie led troops north to Paladuro Canyon in pursuit of Comanches and their horses. He also led a raid to Remolino, Mexico, with Fort Concho troops. Colonel Grierson took Fort Concho soldiers on the Victorio campaign, which effectively ended the Southwestern Indian Wars. Fort Concho was an active United States military post from 1867 to 1889. Troops of the 19th Infantry left Fort Concho for the last time on June 24, 1889. The land had been leased by the Army for Fort Concho, and so it went back to civilian ownership. The fort's buildings were turned into homes, hotels, and warehouses. In 1930, Ginevra Woods Carson obtained the headquarters building and began the preservation efforts seen today. Today, Fort Concho is a vibrant, active preservation project owned and operated by the city of San Angelo. The education of today's children about frontier life is an important task of the fort. The Frontier School program at Fort Concho provides 4th graders with a quick trip back into the 1880s. They attend class in the restored schoolhouse, dress in period-style clothing, and live the life of the 1880s child. Their school marm holds classes using the most advanced teaching tools of the 19th century. Fort Concho not only provides a look at the buildings and the equipment of a frontier fort, It also gives a glimpse into the 1880s way of life through its living history program. Volunteers are the cornerstone of this successful and entertaining program. Hats off to these wonderful people. Annually, more than 2,000 volunteers provide their time and efforts for the fort's various activities. Museum docents help guide visitors around the fort. This program includes junior guides comprised of local youth ages 12 to 16. More than 100 volunteers make up the various military units of the fort. These units provide entertainment and service to the local community in Fort Concho. They can be seen riding in parades, providing color guard services, and adding character to special fort activities. These units include infantry, cavalry, and buffalo soldiers. They're supported by an artillery unit that uses authentic weapons to make things just a little more exciting. In addition to these fighting troops, there are also teamsters who drive mule teams just like back in the 1880s. Women played an important role in the early fort life, so the women of the era are also represented. Army laundresses and officers' wives and family are paid tribute for their services by being represented. In addition to the volunteers, the fort is staffed by a limited number of full-time and part-time professionals. You will see some of these hard-working folk while touring the fort. Feel free to ask them questions about what you're seeing. The first weekend is in December. Is home to the fort's biggest event, Christmas at Old Fort Concho. Living history volunteers recreate the sights and sounds of a long-ago era, and merchants and artisans offer unique gift ideas for the Christmas shopper. Children are entertained with games, shows, and, of course, Santa. The festivities run the first Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in December and are fun for the whole family. Christmas at Old Fort Concho has become the kickoff for the holiday season in San Angelo. Come join us for the fun. We're glad you stopped by. Be sure not to miss any of our buildings while you're touring the fort. Our staff and volunteers are ready to answer any questions you might have during your visit. While in San Angelo, don't miss historic Concho Street or the Paseo de Santa Angela, which reflects San Angelo's pride in its history. Thanks for visiting with us, and we hope you find Fort Concho National Historic Landmark as much of a treasure as we do. Y'all come back to see us.